We're going to start sending letters out to various countries starting tomorrow, and they'll range in value from maybe 60 or 70% tariffs to 10 and 20% tariffs. On the 4th of July, while Americans celebrated their independence with fireworks and parades, President Donald Trump took a different approach. From the East Room of the White House, he launched the next phase of his global trade campaign, announcing that letters would be sent to countries around the world, laying out new U.S. tariff rates ranging from 10% all the way up to 70%. These tariffs, he said, would go into effect on the 1st of August. The message was clear: sign a deal or face the cost. With agreements already reached with Vietnam and the United Kingdom, Trump felt vindicated. But one country just across the northern border remains locked in an unusually tense standoff: Canada. And unlike the others this time, Trump's strategy may hit a wall. Trump says he plans to spend part of his 4th of July holiday sending letters to countries notifying them of their new tariff rates. We have a lot of great things going, and we're getting along with countries, but some will be disappointed because they're going to have to pay tariff. Trump's 90 deals in 90 days campaign has picked up pace. The UK locked in a mini deal. Vietnam accepted a revised tariff schedule. According to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, around 100 countries could qualify for a 10% base rate if they reach terms fast. But Canada is taking a different approach. Rather than rushing into a deal, Ottawa has reopened negotiations carefully and only after withdrawing its digital services tax to get back to the table. Even so, no agreement has been announced. What's different this time is that Canada, unlike others, seems willing to push back. Americans are celebrating their country's past and present today, on Independence Day, while Canadians are expressing concerns about what the future could hold for the Canada-US relationship. For months, trade talks between the US and Canada had stalled. In late June, Trump abruptly walked away from the table after Canada moved ahead with its digital services tax, a 3% levy targeting US tech giants. Days later, under pressure, Prime Minister Mark Carney repealed the tax to reopen negotiations. But the concessions stopped there. Unlike other nations, Canada hasn't rushed to finalize a new deal. Instead, it has taken a quieter, slower approach, reopening discussions but refusing to give in to every demand. That includes Trump's likely next target, Canada's dairy sector. Canada's supply management system, which uses quotas and tariffs to protect domestic milk producers, has long been a sore point for Trump. But for Canadian policymakers, it's a non-negotiable pillar of economic sovereignty. Reforms would require political capital, cross-provincial consensus, and potentially an act of parliament. Though dairy was not officially raised, the idea of including it in the talks has triggered political backlash in Canada. And so far, Carney has not signaled any willingness to make concessions. This resistance is more than symbolic. If no agreement is reached by the 21st of July deadline, Canada could face tariffs as high as 70% on its steel, aluminum, and auto exports, sectors deeply integrated into U.S. supply chains. The risk here is mutual. According to Statistics Canada, over 75% of Canadian automotive exports, roughly 80 billion Canadian dollars per year, go directly to the United States. Meanwhile, U.S. manufacturers rely heavily on Canadian inputs, especially in the Great Lakes region. Trump's escalating tactics may spark retaliation, not just diplomatically, but economically. If the U.S. imposes sweeping tariffs on Canada, it could disrupt cross-border supply chains, increase prices for U.S. consumers, and trigger political blowback in Midwestern states. I think the reality is we're dealing with a president who is incredibly abnormal and not something we're used to. Trump's tariff-first strategy has delivered quick deals in some cases, but with Canada, the calculus is different. This is not a developing economy, adjusting its terms to avoid disruption. It's a G7 ally with the economic weight and political structure to absorb short-term pressure. By pushing too hard, Trump may risk breaking a relationship that has long benefited both nations. A deal is still possible, but if the U.S. insists on unconditional surrender, Canada may choose to walk. And if that happens, the 21st of July won't just mark a failed negotiation. It could mark the beginning of something far more costly, the unraveling of North America's most vital trade alliance. U.S. President Donald Trump leveraged trade talks to get Canada to back off the digital services tax, and now his sights might be set on a bigger fish. Or is it a cow? Trump has long complained about the system in place to protect Canada's dairy industry known as supply management. In 2025, Donald Trump reignited his campaign of economic pressure. One deal at a time, one threat at a time. He's already pushed Canada back to the table. Now he wants more. And his new target isn't steel or tech, it's milk. Trump has long slammed Canada's dairy supply management system, a system he says cheats American farmers and distorts trade. With bilateral talks underway and the 21st of July deadline looming, the question is clear. Will Trump make dairy the next big demand? And if he does, how far will Canada go to resist? Listen. Donald Trump is in Iowa tonight. He has said he will be talking about his trade agenda as it relates to farmers. Sounds like another chance for him to weigh in on his complaints about Canadian dairy. Trump is attacking a system that has defined Canadian dairy for decades. Supply management sets strict quotas on how much milk Canadian farmers can produce and how much foreign milk can enter. Once import quotas are filled, tariffs spike, often to 250 or even 300%. To Trump, that's not partnership, that's protectionism. He says American farmers are locked out, even when agreements like USMCA promised better access. At recent rallies, he's escalated the pressure, linking dairy tariffs to bigger grievances, trade deficits, unfair subsidies, and what he calls a one-sided relationship. His logic is simple. If Canada wants a broader trade deal, the dairy wall has to come down. And for a president who thrives on clear wins, breaking Canada's dairy defenses would be another trophy. But this time, Canada isn't just relying on quiet resistance. In June, the Canadian Parliament passed a law that explicitly prohibits using the dairy system as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations. The legislation passed unanimously, supported by every party. The message: dairy is off the table. For supporters, the system isn't just about milk. It's about food security, rural jobs, and price stability. Instead of chasing volatile global markets, Canada caps production, sets prices based on actual costs, and avoids overproduction. It's not perfect, but it's predictable. And for smaller farms in Quebec, BC, and across the prairies, that predictability means survival. Still, the pressure is real. The U.S. ambassador has publicly stated that if Trump and Carney reach a deal, Parliament will find a way to follow. In other words, laws can change if the political will is there. And like Mr. Carney is a good man. He's an intelligent man, but he is the only arbiter of what's in the best interest of Canada. For Prime Minister Mark Carney, the next few weeks will be critical. He's promised to protect the dairy system, but he also wants a comprehensive trade deal with the U.S., one that restores stability for auto parts, steel, and cross-border investment. If Canada refuses to budge on dairy, Trump could walk away or impose new tariffs starting the 9th of July. But if Carney concedes, the political cost could be severe. Dairy is deeply embedded in Canada's political fabric. The new law was designed to raise the stakes to ensure that any future concession would come with a heavy price. And Carney knows yielding now could fracture support across key provinces. Former officials have already warned about setting dangerous precedents. One retreat invites another, and if dairy falls, what comes next? Water, environment, immigration. This is no longer just a policy debate. It's a confrontation between two visions of power: Trump's brute force leverage and Canada's attempt to defend a domestic model built over generations. If Trump succeeds in cracking Canada's dairy shield, it will be more than a trade victory. It will prove that even the most entrenched domestic systems can fall under pressure. And if Carney holds the line, it could mark the moment Canada reasserts its economic sovereignty or faces retaliation. Either way, the clock is ticking and the milk fight is just getting started. Last night I had a good conversation with President Trump, and we agreed to recommence our negotiations with a view to the 21st of July deadline that we had agreed in Kananaskis. So what can we expect from the Trump administration now that talks with Canada are back on? Canada blinked and Trump seized the moment. Just hours before a controversial digital tax was set to take effect, Prime Minister Mark Carney called President Trump and surrendered. Canada scrapped a law worth 7 billion Canadian dollars, hoping to reopen trade talks that Trump had abruptly shut down just days earlier. It worked. Talks resumed. Trump got everything he wanted without giving an inch, but he's not finished. He's pressing for more, and this time, the price could be even higher. How far will Trump push? And how much more can Canada afford to give here? Canada seemingly has played this cart point in time, and so was it withdrawn out of goodwill, and is it going to get us more than just talks restarting? Trump got exactly what he wanted, without offering anything in return. The tax is gone. The 301 investigation candled threatened tariffs suspended for now, but Canada didn't win any tariff relief. As of the 30th of June, the U.S. maintains elevated tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and autos, as high as 50% in some categories since March 2025. This follows a pattern. In recent trade talks with the UK, Trump agreed to resume dialogue, but didn't remove tariffs. Means the US-Canada talks even now are happening with a loaded gun on the table, and Trump's finger is still on the trigger. Is a big victory for our tech companies and our American workers here at home on this planet. And every country on the planet needs to have good trade relationships with the United States. Even after getting what he wanted, Trump didn't ease up. He's still pushing for access to Canada's tightly controlled dairy and poultry sectors, areas protected under Canada's supply management system. And he's gone further, accusing 11 out of 13 Canadian provinces of banning American products from shelves or shutting U.S. companies out of procurement contracts. He's called these moves nasty. And though no new tariffs have been triggered yet, the threat still hangs. Behind closed doors, both U.S. and Canadian negotiators know Trump doesn't let things go. He escalates until he wins more or until the other side walks. In Mr. Carney's comments earlier today, he talked about this being part of a larger negotiation. But he said it was expected as part of a bigger deal, talked about it not making sense to collect these revenues, and later have to remit them. Almost positioning this, Carney for now is staying calm. He says negotiations are part of a broader deal, and emphasizes that everything is still in progress. But behind that calm is concern. Canada has already offered a lot. Since December 2024, the Carney government has approved billions more in border security spending, supported the controversial U.S.-led Golden Dome Missile Defense Initiative, passed Bill C-2 on border measures, and passed Bill C-5 to ease U.S. investment in Canadian critical minerals. And now the DST is gone, the most direct economic concession to date. What has Canada gotten in return? Not much. No tariff relief, no market access wins, no permanent guarantees. Trade expert Stuart TR calls this an extremely high price to pay just to return to negotiations with no guarantee of success. And the negotiations themselves remain secretive, giving no clarity on what else Canada might be forced to give up next. Both sides are aiming for a final deal by the 21st of July, less than 3 weeks away. But even with talks back on, nothing is certain. If Trump refuses to offer meaningful concessions like tariff rollbacks or access guarantees, this apparent victory may unravel. Carney could walk away again, this time with a stronger case. Canadian Parliament might block deeper concessions, especially on agriculture. Or Canada could quietly lean more toward Europe, rebalancing its trade ties beyond Washington. Trump may have won this round, but if he overreaches, if he demands too much, offers too little, and pushes too hard, he risks losing the very deal he just got back on track. Because even the quietest partner can flip the table when pushed too far.